Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland.
The state rested its case after presenting evidence in the sentencing hearing for Austin Thompson on Friday. Next week, Judge Paul Ridgway will hear the defense's evidence before making a decision about Thompson's punishment for killing 5 people in a shooting spree in the Hedingham neighborhood and on the nearby Greenway in 2022. WRAL Shaun Gallegher is here with me. You've been inside the courtroom all of this week, and we're kind of going to sum up what we've heard in court this week. But let's start, Shaun, with what we heard in court today.
Yeah, so RPD had a digital forensics analyst who wrapped up his second half of his testimony today and really went over Austin Thompson's internet search history, which is something people have been incredibly interested in because it may give an idea of what led up to the shooting. I mean, they were looking at his cell phone that he had 2 years before that shooting and exactly what he was looking into. They pointed out more than 1,000 searches that he had related to guns, actual other school shootings, and even more specific questions like if juveniles can get the death penalty, which is something that we've learned is not the case here. But it's stuff that might seem concerning on the surface, but his attorney really had a lot of questions on Friday about this and whether these things could be taken out of context. We want to take a listen to a bite from her right here.
So this 2,400 searches total that you looked at, that constitutes less than 10% of that database, correct?
Yes.
And so the other
give or take.
The other 90% was not of concern to you.
I wouldn't say it wasn't of concern, but it wasn't relevant.
Wasn't relevant.
Right.
There can be reasons people search things that you can't surmise just from their search history. Is that fair?
Yes.
So what Kelly Manette's trying to make a point there is that, they are looking at more than 20,000 searches and isolating about 10% of that. And her big argument there is a lot of this could be taken out of context, that if he's searching for guns and he's an avid hunter with his father, is that really as bad as it seems now in hindsight? Of course, everybody knows that's 2020.
All right. So what have you observed in this court this week that we may have not seen? If people have been watching our live stream on YouTube, and have there been any moments in particular that have stood out to you?
Yeah, I think, one of the things about being in court, we've only got one camera, but I have my head on a swivel that entire time. And a lot of the time I'm trying to see how Austin Thompson is reacting to a lot of this. And, a question that a lot of people have had is he medicated or something like that? Because he's really not responding the way that you would expect people to respond to some of the just awful testimony that we've heard. I mean, I've been in courtrooms for, well over the last 10 years, and the most emotional courtroom I've ever been in has been this week, hearing from, half a dozen people, some of the most gut-wrenching testimony you could ever hear. And when you look at Austin Thompson, he's not really reacting. He's got his head down, which you'd expect, but a lot of times he's, sipping water, yawning a lot, which, that doesn't look good, when you're viewing this from the perspective of what he's admitted to doing. And then there was one moment where he, kind of chuckled. It was after they showed the body camera video of when he shot an officer, and the officer, he made kind of a quip that, it was merely a flesh wound. Everybody in the courtroom did laugh at that, I got to admit. I mean, I chuckled when I heard it because this guy, this ended his career.
Yeah.
And able to make that kind of comment in that moment,
right.
Just a little bit different.
Right after, yeah.
Exactly, but
yeah.
I'm not the one who was behind the trigger there. I'm not the one who shot this guy in the knee. I have the luxury of being able to see it in hindsight now and laugh. If you are that person and you have all these eyeballs on you, it just, again, didn't seem like the best look for him to chuckle in that moment. Hindsight there, or flip side there, when his mom was on the stand, she was talking about some of the better times when they would go and get ice cream on Sundays after Sunday service and things like that. And he smiled and he smirked and chuckled about that. That's a normal response, one that I think would be okay to see. But when you juxtapose it with the other one, it's like, well, who are we looking at here?
Right. Judging by what we've heard in cross-examinations and your conversations with the attorneys, what case do we expect the defense to be building when we hear from them next week?
Yeah, so we 100% for certain know that Austin Thompson's mother will get called back up to the stand. She was there in the first week, and she was up there for a while, the state asking her a number of questions. And the defense, rather than just cross-examining her then, said to the judge, I have hours worth of material to go through with her, And the way this is operating is much different than any other trial we've been a part of. It's like the state and the prosecution, they get their turn and they get to kind of go through everything. Defense gets a chance to like kind of cross-examine, but they didn't want to derail this entire presentation.
Right.
So they said, we'll just call her back next week, go through it then. So that's going to be something that you really want to pay attention to there because, again, hours worth of material, that's going to be a long time. But the weird part here is that we're not trying to determine guilt or innocence, you know? So the defense there has already admitted Austin is guilty. He's admitted guilt to every single charge that's against them, but they need to put together a case that Austin is able to be rehabilitated because what they're arguing here is whether or not he'll ever be eligible for parole. He's obviously going to be sentenced to life. That's mandatory here, but they need to have this discussion about whether or not he's eligible for parole. He was 15 at the time. The rest of his life is a lot longer than an adult who, you know, would be 40 at the time. So that's something that they're going to present that case to Judge Paul Ridgway, where he will need to determine, is Austin Thompson somebody who's capable of being fixed? That, you know, this did happen. It's awful. Nobody's questioning that. But can he be rehabilitated into an upstanding member of society, no matter when that could be, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now?
Let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back.
I would imagine, you know, the judge being able to determine things about Austin Thompson's current demeanor.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of that. That's where some of this stuff about how's he reacting in the courtroom comes into play. We also don't know, after that self-inflicted gunshot wound, what his ability is, you know, whether that affected his speech patterns or emotional abilities or anything like that. So with all of that said, what is your gut telling you about whether Austin Thompson will himself take the stand?
Yeah, I mean, what has he got to lose, right? I think he's not fighting for his innocence or anything like that where he could get caught up in a cross-examination and they could be like, we got you there. They've admitted everything. So I don't know for certain. His attorneys have not indicated any way, one way or another. The state didn't call him to the stand at all this week, so we'll see if he goes up there. But I think ultimately it's trying to figure out what could it do to benefit him, I think is the best way to think of it. And, you know, we've heard him speak in single words, responding to the judge. We don't know the full capacity of how he can comprehend in a fast-paced place like that, having, you know, critical thinking type skills to be able to respond in a thoughtful manner. We just don't know if he's capable of that at this point.
Right. So obviously, like you said, next week defense gets started Tuesday, right?
Right.
Right. We're not having court on Monday. So what is the timeline for these proceedings from here, you know, once the defense presents? How long do we think that's going to take, all of that?
I think a lot of people, the questions that they've had is, you know, how long can this go on? I mean, even this week we were like, all right, there's a lot of people that'll get called to the stand from the state's perspective, but I think if you talk to any of the other media members there, or even some of the probably law enforcement that are there, we didn't really anticipate that it would go until Friday. But here we are. I mean, we got halfway through the day Friday, and they said, all right, the state rests. That being said, I mean, lawyers get paid to talk, right? They can always find an argument to make and do that. So I would anticipate that Austin Thompson's defense team is, you know, going to utilize as much of that time as they can. Whether it's in that 3 to 4 day range, we'll see. But, you know, like we said earlier, Austin Thompson's mom is going to take the stand again, and just for her alone, they said they have hours worth of material. And, you know, that's not even bringing in the fact that you mentioned his mental state. We haven't heard from an expert at all about him psychologically or anything
medically.
or medically, anything like that. The little close thing was, again, on Friday, the FBI had an analyst come up. She has done no analysis of him, but kind of spoke from a behavioral standpoint of how mass shooters work. And she went through a number of things that reflect a lot about what Austin Thompson did in this case, while not, you know, correlating the two, because she can't.
Right.
Will the defense bring somebody up to kind of counteract what her testimony was, to say, you know, we know you've done this study and you have this for other mass shooters. He's not other mass shooters. They are going to try to, you know, put forth a plan that he didn't plan this, even even though there's a note where he says, I hate people in the world,
Right.
That he, had these search histories that they say are out of context. Are they going to go more into that? And, the fact that he had these other torn up notes in a chapstick bottle hidden from his parents, who say they had no clue anything was going on, that had potentially bomb diagrams on him, that, how do they explain that away in a way that could potentially allow him to get parole? It seems very difficult, but I'm no legal expert, but they're going to use all that time next week for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shaun, for being here.
And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. You can sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.